So many times people ask me, what is it about play that entices you so much, Maude? Well, basically, it makes the job more fun in many, many regards. But most importantly, it is so important for a child on many different levels. In today's society, where things are very performance driven, curriculum driven, academically product oriented driven, we want to look at when do we stand still and simply enjoy the moment. Basically, stop and smell the roses. In play, we have that opportunity. Not only do you have that opportunity to use it for the essence of development, but it's also a space of connection. Think about being playful as an adult. Think about your partner, your significant other, and think about the moments of intimacy that is connected with a sense of playfulness, a sense of togetherness, and joking with each other, and having um, a feeling of it doesn't even matter what you say. I know your intent. I feel your intent. So play has got a work that transcends age. I've listened to somebody say a little bit, um, can I say, skeptically or maybe scoffingly, that, play is not the work of the child. It should be something different. I get that. Play is play. It shouldn't be work, but it is the work of the brain to integrate while I am playing. That's what we are looking at. While the child is playing, they are figuring out all kinds of pieces. What does these objects feel like, look like, sound like? How can I use these objects in a sequence of events? How can I produce an end product based on what I was playing off with? How can I become creative if I'm making a castle looking this way and then I'm making the castle looking that way? How can I make up my own stories and figure out the beginning and the middle and the end of the story? Yes, it's all playful. And we don't want to talk about play as being work, but it is work in the brain. It is how the networks are being put together. So when I think of play as a medium. It's an activity in itself, but it's also a medium of connection that comes between persons playing together. It becomes also a place of control where I can feel the prowess and the skills I'm building and scaffold that into newer and more advanced skill. And then it also becomes a place of correction, which is what every family and every educator wants. That behavior should be modified according to the way it's been received by another or by an environment. Play affords us to do this in a way that is more joyful and accepting to the natural person within. And it doesn't make it feel like, there I am, I'm a behavior problem, and this is what I need to do, and this is how I'm going to get corrected, or my behavior is going to become extinguished. Play gives us a way to really forge a way through for children to develop the things they have to. It's about gross and fine motor skills. It's about social skills. It's about emotional development. And it's also about academic prowess. If certain levels of play does not develop, it impacts the way I can read one day, the way I can comprehend what I'm reading. It impacts the way I can use math. There are different developmental underpinnings that is worked on during play that is important for building those building blocks to achieve and perform on these different levels. One of them being praxis. So what is praxis? The way that the brain tells the body how to move. So when I'm figuring out, okay, there's an obstacle in the way. I wanted the train to go through that tunnel, but now that tunnel collapsed. So how am I going to get through on that track right now? The how of that invokes sequencing, it invokes creativity, it invokes cognitive thinking, but also practical thinking. It invokes the whole idea about, do I even want to tackle that obstacle or do I want to avoid it? Um, there's so many different levels that happens in that play scenario. And when two people play together, like especially when we see siblings having a little bit of moment together, I want to do this and I want to do that, and that's not fair, but we're working it out. What is fair and what's not fair? And is life ever going to be fair? Right? So in praxis, you are building on, I'm having a motor idea. I'm planning that idea ahead of time. I'm initiating that idea. I am sequencing through that idea when I'm executing on it. I am completing it in the same timing as my peer. And I'm giving my body feedback what that felt like so I can do it again. And the more I repeat something, the more I become automatic with it, especially if that repetition is coming from my own intrinsic motivation and not being prompted, as is natural in typical development. So when we play, these things come about. My heart goes out to families who come and say to me, but Maude, we didn't play as a child. I don't know how to play with my child. It's a painful piece to hear, but my heart goes out to that. I have huge empathy for that because I think sometimes the world just doesn't allow us to be at the places we need to be. When we have a child with needs, with learning needs, developmental needs, there's so much push to catch up, to make it happen, to make sure that I can get to my ABCs, make sure I can handwrite and draw and color and cut and do all the things I need to do, speak, be verbal, be expressive. I get that. I so want that for every living being out there. But if the cost is moments of joy that is eliminated from that, we must consider if the cost is too high. I'm not saying don't go for the other pieces. I'm saying there are ways you could work on those very same things, but do it in a way where there's joy, where there's happiness, where there is a place of being. It could look like anything. It could be, this is the kind of play that it's free. Whatever happens, happens. One of my favorite games to play is, and I'm not the one who figured this one out. I actually got that from Sheila Frick, a colleague of mine that I really respect highly. And what basically happens is there's a carpet or a square or an area that's sort of a boundary area, and then everybody lays down. You're not allowed to stand up. You can sit up but not stand up, and then we all have socks on. And so the game is that you're playing with each other, almost rough wrestling with each other, to see who can get each other's socks off first. Beautiful little game, and it's so much fun, and your core gets a workout like you will not believe. Beautiful postural control work, beautiful anti-gravity work, rough and tumble wrestling. You're integrating vestibular with proprioception. You're doing so much good and you're having fun doing it. When we're doing pillow fights, when we're doing balloon volleyball in the middle of the living room, when we are building tunnels with the cushions in the living room and we're making it happen, we're crashing into it and we're sliding onto it. I know. Maybe we've paid a lot of money to have that living room furniture. And we have to think twice before we do things like that. But maybe there are other ways of doing the same thing. But the creativity that comes around. When I was growing up in South Africa, we didn't have catalogs or Toys R Us or an Amazon that we could order any toy that we wanted to. And I don't think that everybody can either today, even. But at that time, we played with what we had available in the house. And so I can remember so many times with my mum and my dad playing cards with their friends around the table. And us kids would be building a house underneath the table with blankets and towels and pegs and hanging lines and making tunnels as we weave ourselves in and out of our parents' feet. Yeah, sometimes irritating them, but most of the times we were allowed to play the game. And we built these structures out of nothing, you know, Mom, can I use this? Can I use that? Yeah, sure, go ahead, as long as we can play our card game, do your thing. And we would do these kind of games and they would be productive. I can't remember us ever getting to any kind of a completion, but it was a synergy. We were working on a task together. We were playing together for a common goal of simply being in the moment with each other. And it was informative. It was socially informative. It was physically informative. It was problem solving oriented. And it was natural and definitely joyful. Of course, there's always somebody ending up crying, and then all the mummies and daddies are upset, and then we have to go our merry ways again. Think about those big boxes that you get when you have your new refrigerator delivered, or your new stove, or your new whatever implement. And that box, oh my goodness, what a treasure trove. Putting that in the middle of the living room or in the middle of a therapy room and saying, go to town. Let's make anything you want from this box. We once had a box like that became so many different things over the week as many kids was able to sort of add their little piece to it, right? Every center, every room in therapy should have a what I call a box of nothings. And what I mean by that, it's sticks and stones and lint and yarn and things that scissors and tape, even especially those painter's tape, right? Things that you can make things of that is created from your own visualization. Very different from video games where the visualization is done for you, and visualization being a building block to imagination. When we think about tickling games, so many of our families find joy in a tickling game with their child because, especially when the child is not so responsive to their overtures, a tickle almost always gets a response until the response becomes overwhelmed, and then we have a little bit of a moment on our hands. So I always say to parents, we're never going to take that away from you. Tickle, but follow up your tickles every now and again with a nice deep hug, because the tickle is sympathetic arousal, and then the hug comes in and just brings in the parasympathetic balance again, which is nice to bring the calm back so the child doesn't become overwhelmed with too much arousal. Just a nice little piece to do. Play brings back the creativity in children. It brings the connectivity. It brings the place of where we can connect without needing to think about what is in for tomorrow. And I think I've said this before, but I will say this again. If we harness today in a good way, it becomes the scaffold for tomorrow. So when we play, when we find moments of play, as a family, as siblings, as parent and child, when we find those moments of play, they become the grounding on which tomorrow can be built. So we are so worried about tomorrow, as we should be if we are parents, as we should be if we are educators. We all want to worry about the child that doesn't quite get where we want them to be. But don't let that worry take away the moments that we need today to make sure that tomorrow can look better. Today is the scaffold for tomorrow. See you next time.